Ribbed vaults lessened the pressure on supporting walls, enabling large windows to be inserted. Romanesque architecture had only permitted small openings in the walls. The new construction technique and the vast size of the cathedral that was planned for Cologne called for an experienced master builder. The choice fell on a mason by the name of Master Gerard. We know very little about him. A large part of his life was spent on the road, as was customary for a craftsman in the High Middle Ages. In those days, structural knowledge was still based on experience and not on calculations. Master Gerard extended his knowledge by working on the great cathedral building sites. His travels also took him to France, the birthplace of Gothic architecture. In Amiens, they were building a magnificent cathedral, and later he was to use the same method of construction in Cologne. Gerard talked to experienced architects and had them explain everything they knew about the construction of Gothic church buildings. After years on the road, Master Gerard finally settled in Cologne. He was now allowed to call himself an architect. When he was commissioned to build the cathedral, he drew up a plan that could not have been more ambitious. He first designed the choir, which was to be embellished with a ring of 7 chapels. The number 7 was supposed to reflect the creation of the earth in 7 days. Numeric symbolism is a typical feature of the Gothic era. The number of individual structural elements always refers to certain sacral numbers. This also applies to the entrances to the cathedral. In designing the facades, Gerard had the holy city of Jerusalem in mind. Jerusalem has 12 gates in all, so Gerard planned 4 doors for each of the 3 facades. The gigantic windows in the front of Cologne Cathedral are also truly monumental. Light enters the impressive building through 10,000 square meters of artistically stained glass mosaic. Glass thus covers a larger area than the floor. Master Gerard wanted to build a cathedral of ultimate perfection. The clear structuring of the ground plan alone was to guarantee harmony and unity. Gerard designed a huge 5-naved basilica with a 3-naved transept to give the church the shape of a Latin cross. He subdivided the ground plan into squares of equal size so that the arrangement of the columns and the structure of the choir on the wall could be implemented exactly as he intended. In its dimensions, Cologne Cathedral is unsurpassed. The majestic west facade is 60 meters wide. The twin spires are 157 meters high. The cathedral covers a total area of 7,000 square meters. The basilica is 144 meters long. Master Gerard had finished his plans. But before work could begin, parts of the old cathedral first had to be demolished. On August 15, 1248, Archbishop Konrad von Hochstaden laid the foundation stone for the new cathedral. Once the foundations were in place, construction of the 7 chapels round the choir got underway. Master Gerard was responsible for organizing and managing the entire project. Around 100 construction workers were employed on the site. The building plans of the Middle Ages looked nothing like the filigree computerized sketches of today. They were drawn on a scale of 1:1. Using a plumb line, scriber, large pair of compasses and a rule, Master Gerard gave the measurements of each individual detail on the foundation at the precise position where it would stand later. On the basis of these drawings, carpenters made wooden patterns for use by the stonemasons. Cologne Cathedral is comprised mainly of hewn blocks of stone, which had to be brought up at great effort from the Drachenfels region 40 kilometers to the south. The material was rough cut in the quarry and given its finish on site. A drawing of a medieval building site. Extensions of wooden beams built into the wall served as the foundation for a scaffold. The heavy loads were pulled up by means of rope winches. The huge blocks of stone, which were often a metre long and weighed 350 kilograms, were placed in their final position with special tongs. Lighter building material, like clay, mortar or molten lead used in those days for pointing, was carried up gently sloping spiral staircases known as asses' towers. By medieval standards, construction of Cologne Cathedral progressed very swiftly. After 74 years, the choir was completed, an event Master Gerard did not live to see. He died 20 years after work began. His successors recognized the brilliance of his construction plan and stuck closely to it. Indeed, in 1280, his designs for the west facade were recorded on a huge sheet of parchment. This 4-meter-high plan of the facade is undoubtedly the biggest, most beautiful, and most important architectural drawing of the Middle Ages. It served as a model for the later construction work. Once the remains of the old cathedral had finally been demolished, the south aisle of the nave could be built on the new foundations, followed by the southern main spire. Then the north nave was completed, an exact copy of the south side, because Master Gerard's guiding principle had always been the total homogeneity of the cathedral. Cologne in the early 16th century. The heyday of Gothic architecture was over, and the first phase in the construction of the cathedral had been completed. It had become increasingly difficult to raise money in order to continue the building work. After 280 years, the mammoth project was put on hold. A crane was left standing on the tower on the west facade in the hope that construction would soon recommence, but 300 years were to pass before it was used again. It was not until the early 19th century that the spirit of Romanticism roused the cathedral from its slumbers. Sulpice Boisserée, the son of a Cologne merchant, desperately wanted to see the cathedral completed, but the plans had either been lost or destroyed. So Boisserée had a drawing made of the cathedral. Meanwhile, the parchment plan had been rediscovered, so he used that for the west facade. In 1842, Cologne was again under Prussian rule. The state exchequer and the newly founded Central Cathedral Construction Association ensured the financing of the project. Site huts were erected and work recommenced. Building activity was intense and effective. After only 38 years, Cologne Cathedral was completed. The huge spires tower up to a height of 157 meters. On October the 15th, 1880, the architectural masterpiece was completed when the finial was put in place on top of the south spire. Experts described it as the perfect cathedral. Credit for this architectural milestone must go to Master Gerard. It was he who drew up the overall concept 600 years ago, a concept later generations adhered to with minimal deviation. The Second World War showed little reverence for masterpieces. 14 bombs destroyed large parts of the cathedral, yet, miraculously, the spires remained undamaged. What had taken centuries to create was reduced to rubble almost overnight. Restoration work took many years and is still going on today. The modern enemy is erosion. The weather and pollution are gnawing inexorably at the mighty walls. And the problem is growing day by day, with damage emerging faster than it can be repaired. Thus, the fate of the cathedral is in the hands of the restorers. Cologne Cathedral is a permanent building site. Since 1996, the stone colossus by the River Rhine has been part of the world's cultural heritage. But how much longer can it be saved? The cathedral is at least safe from destruction by an earthquake because it is perfectly adapted to the characteristics of the ground on which it stands. This simulation shows that although the spires sway, apart from a few fragments of the wall breaking off, they are able to withstand the forces involved. That's an important feature because the Cologne area is one of the most seismic regions in Germany. For 9 years, Cologne Cathedral was the tallest building in the world. Then in 1889, it was easily surpassed by a steel giant erected next to the River Seine in Paris. 300 meters high, the Eiffel Tower is nearly twice as big. It was made possible by the old technique of pressure distribution and the new method of building with steel, a combination also used for the filigree glass palaces in London and New York. The development of modern materials enables present-day buildings to attain breathtaking heights. Often, the facades are comprised solely of glass, yet the buildings are still stable. But even in the era of reinforced concrete, Cologne Cathedral remains a unique architectural masterpiece. Anyone who hears the bells of Cologne Cathedral and looks up at its spires will feel reverence and respect for the boldness and skills of the master builders of the Middle Ages.